So it looks to me like the problems you identified were actually very profitable revenue streams, and that the SEC is really there to potentially protect the frauds instead of protecting the public interest?
From the consumer side, these frauds are very confusing and they don't seem to make a lot of sense. But from the corporate side and from the regulation side, the people are making profits, so they make a lot of sense. CENTS. They're making a lot of money from this. And that's why they don't want people to know, because they'd have to stop it. They'd have to adapt, evolve, and overcome just like we do every day to get through. So the idea that you could have these mechanisms in place, you could have an agency like the SEC giving these companies a warning, hey, you had an employee call here today and try to give us information, you better run a tighter ship. Or the Sarbanes-Oxley Oversight Board, which when a whistleblower goes to any sort of accounting oversight board involved with the corporation, that is being directly turned over to say, the corporation says, hey, self-preservation first. If we can break the law and get away with it, isn't that just a way of making more money, and that lives up to the corporate mandate? They're there to survive at first cost, and that's what the VP of Human Resources and the General Counsel of EMC did. They thought about their job and their multi-million-dollar salary before they thought of, hey, is this kid onto something? Could it actually be a danger to the company? Are we endangering our clients? Are we endangering the economy as a whole? They didn't seem to be really caring about that.
What's the root cause or primary motivation of these actions taken by regulatory and corporate decision makers? And how would you summarize that for the audience in simplest terms?
That was my concern. I thought I was getting into that company to sell this software to help bring, all this nefarious fiscal activity going on in our economy under control. By putting this software in there, I thought I was making, these clients safer. And I thought I was using my time wisely, and it was helping to defend our economy, which kind of seemed to be in trouble after 9/11, right? Only to find that this software is intentionally created to give the illusion of protection while really making everyone at a higher risk. It allowed the people who were perpetrating the crimes to do it at a lower risk, but it was raising the risk of the corporation who was trying to mitigate its risks, right? So it made it easier for the people who were stealing money. It made it harder for investigators to catch them. It made it almost impossible for corporations to even know if they were a victim. And the American people never had a chance because our media outlets I would say between 30 and 40 different media outlets we tried that, we were just either not responded to, or they said it doesn't pertain to their readers, or that they would like to carry it, but their advertisers would disagree. So, yeah, or it's too big. It's appropriate and it's pertinent to too many people that they don't know how to handle it because they're just a small newspaper here in Connecticut, the Hartford Courant or something like that. This story is too big. And they tell you, hey, why don't you go to the Wall Street Journal? Well, because a lot of those companies in the Wall Street Journal are only making a lot of money because of this thing that I'm trying to tell you that is endangering all of our economy, because the international companies that are doing this to us, they don't necessarily even have a lot of jobs in America, some of these international banks that are running this and using this software to prey on other groups of banks that are unwitting to this sort of thing. So it was really an eye-opening and a growing experience. And yeah, I was a little bit bitter when I had my hefty paycheck and my comfortable lifestyle and all the amenities and accoutrements of that lifestyle taken away from me. But at the end of the day, I just realized that it happened to me because I didn't know enough about the game. I trusted what I had been told. I trusted what I believed. I trusted that these checks and balances that I was educated to understand were there. I trusted that those safety nets were really there, these protections. If I actually thought that by sending an email or making a call or doing any of the things that I did to end up in that situation would have led to you're going to kill your career, you're not going to be able to buy a house and have kids and do all this stuff for several years afterwards, well, then I might have, thought differently about it. But luckily at the time I was naive enough to, just do what I did.
Does the ongoing hype regarding the global economic depression scare you?
Well, no, because I know, all this hype is contrived. It's there to use fear to sell things, right? I know that any calamity that's going on right now can be prevented if we restore the mechanisms that allowed it to become broken in the first place. And that starts with communicating these things and getting them out to people who might be able to better fund independent media outlets and get this information to the people, since the traditional fourth estate's no longer doing its job.
What do you know that others who fear our economic future do not realize?
Well, I know that it's a game being played out there. I know that some of the people in the game, their job is to act like they're there to protect the market and all this other stuff. And when you understand that those people have different agendas and that they're playing with other people's emotions and playing with people's lives and their retirements and their futures for their families and things like this, that you have to step back at it and almost look at it as a game too. And the problem is not enough people have been looking at this illusion and saying, all right, let's figure out how to dissolve and dissemble this illusion. Let's show how, these things that have been going on are visible from these angles and help people see these things. Whereas, to do something less than that would be to engage in propagating those illusions. It'd be to, cheer on Jim Cramer as he leads more investors off the cliff.
What role does fear play in consumerism and market dynamics?
Well, what I understand is that fear is a mechanism that it was traditionally used for survival, and that people at a certain point came to understand that we could use this survival mechanism and make people do things that, against their will, basically. And so what they do is they use fear as this primary survival mechanism that's installed in everybody, and they give you false information that's putting you in fear all the time so that you'll take these actions that they're predicting. And basically it's taking advantage of people who don't understand what's going on and taking advantage of their lack of ability to cognitively understand what's going on and go through a process of learning to dissolve that fear. They're taking that fear, they're bolstering and feeding that fear and giving it momentum, and then using it against people to get them to either buy into gold or buy into end of the world type of supplies and all of these other things that go on.
Where does the fear tie in with our monetary system? And how far back does this go in history?
Well, the economy is driven by consumerism. Consumerism is driven by sales. And sales predominantly are driven by fear. I have to make you in fear that you don't have what you need right now and that what I'm selling you is what you need. That was your job as a salesperson. If it's Sarbanes-Oxley, you're at risk of being audited by these, the SEC or the FBI or whatever. If you had this software, it would satiate that concern. The whole point of advertising, as we're taught, is to make whoever you're advertising to feel insecure and incomplete with what they have. They connect your emotion to your pocketbook, and that pocketbook idea of whatever's on the screen, that's what my pocketbook's going to connect to next. So they play a snappy Beatles song, then you're like, I like that, it makes me feel good, I remember hearing that song long ago, it made me happy. Then you're like, I want to buy that because it's associated, it's called transfer, and boom, they've got you. So at the end of the day, the economy is based on fear because fear drives sales and sales drives consumerism, and that's how the economy gets rich, which is why they don't give a sales degree in college, because when you understand what is necessary to do the job of sales, they give this out in certain mystery schools, they'll give it to you in certain corporations. I happened to learn to run my own business while I was in college and acquire the skills through reading books. And so the information is either gotten, like I did, through running your own business and doing a bunch of research, or you can go into one of these organizations that teaches this, but it's not an educational organization. It's more of a fraternal organization that would want to teach you the art of persuasive speech and rhetoric, because it's through rhetoric and persuasive speech that the elite actually govern the rest of the people. It's through the use of effective arguments, even though if they're full of fallacies, if those fallacies are believed by the people, it's effective rhetoric. And this type of misuse of effective rhetoric for the reasons of political gain or personal profit is called sophism. This problem's existed since the time of Plato, when Plato was talking about the sophists. This is where you get lawyers today with sophisticated arguments. They're arguing for money, not because it's the right thing to do or it's good for their country. They're getting paid. So when you're arguing for money, purely for money, and not for right or wrong or morality or ethics or American ideas or whatnot, you run the risk of having people who are trained in, highly trained in the effective use of persuasive speech and rhetoric in the form of lawyers, politicians, and salesmen out there doing these things without people, really understanding what's going on. And there's a lot of really advanced techniques that can be put into that are used by the politicians, that are definitely used by lawyers in lines of questioning and whatnot. So by becoming aware of these things, by, through my experience as a salesperson, and then realizing they don't want people to understand how to speak effectively, how to speak persuasively. And let's look at, advertising and commerce and sales and all this is using fear to make people give their money for a product that is claimed to satisfy their perceived need. And how it works is advertising in the past would appeal to your intellect. This product can serve you in this ways. It has these characters, these facets, these benefits. Now, so in the past, it was intellect over emotion. They weren't using emotion to sell things. And now what they've done is they've put emotion at the top, intellect at the bottom. It's not so specific about how this product could empower you or make your life better. It's more about connecting the emotion to the product, and that emotion connects to your buying and your consumer activities.